Okay, I'm going to call our April 17th, 2023 Village Board to order. Roll call, please.
Nyla Fry. Here. Gary Hersberg.
Here.
Phil Willems.
Here.
Chris Sellner.
Here.
Aaron Moran.
Here.
Joe Zitzelsberger.
Here.
Sam Kaufman.
Here.
Okay, first item we have is confirmation of open meeting compliance, public postings, official notices, online availability.
And I can confirm that the draft agenda was published in the Waunakee Tribune on 4/14. The final agenda was posted in all three official posting locations on 4/12. And the final agenda and packet were made available online on 4/12. Also, just two things for the audience to please be sure you sign in on the sign-in sheet so we have accurate record keeping for your name, address, and municipality. And then those interested in participating in the public comment or public hearing portion of the meeting tonight, please make sure you fill out your cards and hand them to me prior to that agenda item.
Okay, thank you. And I have two announcements for changes on tonight's agenda. Item number 2 under presentations, remarks by outgoing board members will occur at the very end of our meeting. And second, due to the interrelatedness of the first public hearing item and the first business item on the agenda, we're going to move the public hearing item number 1, Kilkenny Farms West, after discussion and action on the annexation item. Okay, then we've got public comment. Is there anyone here who would like to make a comment for anything that's on or off the agenda this evening?
I have two. Linda Ashmore at 114 South Street.
Linda, I think it's probably on, but make sure the light's green.
This is related to the Kilkenny West annexation and GDP SIP. There's two things that I'd like to see addressed a little bit more when you discuss it. One of them is the traffic impact analysis. I understand that will be done before ground is broken, but I'd like that to be really clear. Back when Hubby went in with Lamp House, ground was already broken before the traffic impact analysis came through. So that's the concern, is that if you're putting this by two schools that one of them already has a traffic flow problem. And then the other thing is related to the closed session when they decided on the annexation agreement. I just think those things should be done openly. There's something that deals with a land that the developer will give the village land, and then the village will waive fees, and I'm not sure what fees those are. But I think that should be something that should be more out in the open. Thank you.
Thank you.
The second one is Cody Faust at 1106 Guinness Street.
Hi.
Hello.
Village Board Trustees, thanks for your time. My name is Cody Faust. I live in Kilkenny Farms neighborhood with my wife and 2 young kids. I've been fortunate to be a Waunakee resident for about 5 years now. I know I have limited time to speak tonight, so I'll cut straight to the chase by saying 1 4-year-old's peed pants at Waunakee Park in April is 1 peed pants too many. I'd like to request that the opening of the park restrooms get moved from May 1st to April 1st. I know we can't do actions right now. It's not the time for that, but this past week was a shining example of the need for this change. Weather was great. Everyone was finally able to get out, get some fresh air. The amount of comments I heard at our local parks about bathrooms not being open, or the amount of people I saw try the bathroom door only to find it locked, was staggering. The consequence of having all these people in the parks and no restrooms open varies from people sneaking off into the bushes to relieve themselves to people wholesale driving home to use their own restrooms. This is especially important when we have village activities for kids beginning in the parks in April. If a child needs to use the restroom, they don't live literally next to the park. The only option is to drive home, use the restroom, and come back. And by that time, by and large, the activity's over or nearly over. In closing, although a seemingly small change of 1 month, I believe this change would yield a huge quality of life improvement for village residents, and from every parent, grandparent, and 4-year-old's trousers in Waunakee, please consider making this change. Thanks for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Any others?
No.
Okay. With that, let's move.
And Chris, just, sorry, my bad. Just a quick note. I pushed the wrong microphone. I pushed that microphone button, not that microphone button. Um, we do have one person on as an attendee. I do believe they may be present for an item related to public hearing. So as a reminder, during the public hearing, please raise your hand online if you care to speak at that time.
Okay, thanks, Todd. Next we have our consent agenda. Would anybody like anything pulled, or I'd look for a motion?
I'll move to approve the consent agenda.
Motion by Joe Zitzelberger,
Second.
second by Gary Hertzberg. Any other comments? Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. I will just remind all our board members to make sure you are green when you are voting so that we pick it all up. Next we have under presentations, presentation of gift to Ho-Chunk Nation representatives. So today we have Bill Quackenbush and Casey Brown here from the Ho-Chunk Nation. And we're very pleased to have you here this evening. And Todd, do we?
My suggestion might be to, have them join you at the podium
For this?
for this. Yep.
I was just kind of giving an introduction, but we'll
Okay, then I retract my.
well, before I go off. So, and I was going to give Bill an opportunity if he wanted to talk right off the bat. If he had any comments he'd like to make to us.
Sure. You don't mind?
Go ahead right now.
Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Bill Quackenbush, as he mentioned. I work for the Ho-Chunk Nation of Wisconsin. Serve as their Tribal Historic Preservation Officer. I've worked for them in our department for 20 some years. Years past, we've oftentimes worked alongside the University of Wisconsin, Madison, through different classes and curriculum up there, ranging from environmental through other departments up there. And one in particular is run by a Dr. Jessie Conaway. And so we work collaboratively with her students usually, and as they develop, projects within her class, oftentimes they neglect or overlook, the fact that not only are environmental needs being required to be met, but there's also cultural sensitivity needs. Oftentimes at times they're neglected or they don't consider when they're doing park development or working within where they go in life for careers. And so in short, we oftentimes have 2 or 3 weeks of her ear with her students, and we talk about how, although the environment is great to consider when you're creating green space and all these, things around villages or in their communities out there, oftentimes they have to do their due diligence and take into account, that oftentimes in many of these green spaces, they are set aside for purposes years back, right? There's a burial mound on there, or there's something that's, unique to the environment. And so that they, leave it as green space in the community. So we come in there and we try to include within their mindset that they have to take into account, other communities that have either been here in the past or are still here, and that the use of that green space, it could be multi-purpose. And so we fast forward to Village of Waunakee. One of those years happened to be a focus of one of Dr. Jessie Conaway's up here with her student about the watershed of Madison, right? Dejope, we call it in Ho-Chunk, meaning 4 lakes, and it's very descriptive. Our language has that, process that whatever we use for terminology is very descriptive, right? And so in short, the most important part of the watershed, though, is the headwaters, and that's just where the Village of Waunakee happens to lay. And so her students, it was impressed upon them that, you have a vital role in the Madison community, because everything you do here affects, and it compounds all the way down through that watershed. And so it was important for these students at that time to take into consideration that, although they were studying Lake Mendota, for example, that they definitely, and it was critical for them students to realize that that watershed up there plays a very important role in that. And so we fast forwarded a little further there, and talking and meeting with some of the people that works for the Village of Waunakee, it was important for us to, get to know them government to government. Our tribe is a, federally recognized government, and we stand right alongside, these communities, to assist them as much as we can if there's ability to do so, or to work with them. And oftentimes we heard with these students, that terminology, the collaborative efforts, that we both, collectively would work together, or the three of us, that being the university and the students would work together, to make a better product for all of us. So then, so the Ho-Chunk Nation, obviously, when we talk about our ancestral footprint, you can see right within our insignia, the state of Wisconsin. Right. And our insignia itself talks about, the green representing the earth, and the sky, and the sky. So it encompasses, what, our ancestral areas, entail. And of course, the earth clans, we have 8 of them, and the air clans, we have 4 of them. So we have 12 clans insignias of there, and we're, people of peace, but we're also a warrior-like society. And so this encompasses, what we entail as a tribal people in this area here too. And we've been here for quite a few years. Our ancestry talks about a place called Mogoshuch, Red Banks. It's where Green Bay is, today. And that's where we say our creator placed us. This is our origin spot. And from there is where the Ho-Chunk has always resided since we can we don't have a prehistory. Unlike the Wisconsin history, right? We have talk about the French first arriving in the 1600s, the British in the 1700s, early Americans, 1800s, and here we are today. Well, oftentimes in that history, we forget about the Native Americans, the indigenous peoples, right? And one of them being the Ho-Chunk in this region here. And then we've been here for quite a few years. And I talk about, in our oral history, for example, our people watching this glacier episode take place in this here, and how it changed our environment to such a degree. And as it receded, it left us what we have today, right? This beautiful place we call Dejo, these 4 lakes. That's what created that area, that glacier episode. And so our history goes way back, and we have a lot of, ties to this region here. So when, Todd and this Jesse Conaway and other people, their students there, began to ask about the history of the land, oftentimes we find that, our history is never included in that process. The ability to tell the full story of us as humans living in this area, for thousands of years. And so these students began to realize that story can be told here in the village of Waunakee. And so we fast forward again, and one of the things we just so happened to be doing through that process on another level with our tribe was that there was this great interest in dugout canoes. And there was recent, discoveries in Lake Mendota of, a 1,200-year-old dugout canoe that they had brought out of the lake. Later on, they had a 3,000-year-old dugout canoe that they had brought out of the lake. And we had the ability to say, well, those are my ancestors. I don't know how they got there, but I know who made them, and there's likely more. And the Historic Society, of course, says there's, that before that water had changed the way it had did there was a village, and these dugout canoes were being found at 20-some feet below the surface. So we were just so happened gifted a log by the county of Dane. They had a park project over there by Lake Farm down there, and they had these big giant cottonwoods, and they had to cut because they had to get a trail straight as an arrow through there instead of going around. That's how things work. And they had no use for those dugout or those cottonwood trees down there. So we met with them. That was back in 2015. And they asked, well, we're going to get rid of them. There's no value in that lumber, and I said, well, don't get rid of that. There's always the value in, whatever, of the earth produces. So they gave us those logs, and they were long, logs in there. And so we decided, well, we're going to use them for dugout canoes. And this was before they had found and discovered those ones in the lake. This was before we had talked about, the village of Waunakee, but we began to work on these dugout canoes with our youth. And lo and behold, fast forward to the pandemic, right? And everybody shut their doors and lock it, and we couldn't take our youth into, concentrated areas, could fear that we'd be sick. So they sat there in limbo. And fast forward a little further there, we began to loosen up, the processes there, and we were able to meet with masks on. We took them to the different communities of our youth that are spread throughout our ancestral areas, to Green Bay, to St. Paul, all the way down to Chicago, all the way around through these villages here with our youth, that we would have our youth meet, and they helped us make that dugout canoe. And it was finally finished a year ago, and we decided, well, we're going to set sail. And it was fitting, since Dane County gave us that log, that we're going to take it down to 4 lakes. So we decided, well, we're going to put it in at Lake Mendota Park, and we're going to take off. I've never paddled a dugout canoe in my life, but I was sitting in this one for full 5 days, and we put it in there, and then there was a quick learning curve. And so we took off across the lake there, stopped over the top with our dugout canoe alongside this pontoon and these other people out there where they had raised that 1200-year one. And we had tribal members sitting in front of me on this dugout canoe there. And we began to talk about right below you, 27 feet down there, like here, we raised 1200-year-old dugout canoes. And there's a potential for other ones down there. And we had tribal members in there and youth, our tribal youth in there, it began to set in and realize that, this connection to this area goes back thousands of years. And it was very important for them to realize that this beautiful area, has always been Ho-Chunk area. So here we go down the lakes. We ended up going down the Yahara River, hit the rock, and ended up down there, what we call K-Chunk Village down there. That's Beloit sits there today. And that's where we ended. It was a week-long journey with our youth. And then, but what started that whole thing off was these gentlemen sitting here, that invited us back here this evening here. And they talked about this watershed, how important it was and everything. And we decided, well, let's start here. I said, this is such an important event. We brought that dugout canoe up here even before we had placed it in that water. And what park is that over here, Todd? Village Park. And we set it there. Yeah, there it is. And we brought the dugout canoe out there, and we had a few words with there, and they blessed us, or at least they sent us on our ways. And we ended up going down there, and I just had a few words, put the dugout canoe, and we're off on our journey. And that journey began right here. And the importance of why it's, to take care of these watersheds, it's in that story that we talk about, that if this, becomes destroyed, it destroys everything downriver. And so water is life, they say. It's very important for all of us. And so you guys, do your part. We try to do our part. And if all the neighbors and everybody is around us all do our part, to get through this process over here. So that said, thank you for inviting us over here. I might have taken up a few more minutes of your time than I want, but I wanted to assure that, the story always starts in a proper way. So we go.
Casey, do you want to come on up too? Todd, you should really come up too. Yeah, you really should. Yeah, you're a big part of this, so you should be up here as well.
You want John to come up too while we're at it? While you're inviting folks up?
We'll stand real.
He gets his own special, acknowledgement. So first off, show of hands. How many of you are excited about the snow today? Here in Waunakee? Okay, I got a half of a hand there. So President White Eagle isn't here tonight. One, he's got the flu, but two, they had 28 inches of snow in Black River Falls. So if you feel bad about the snow we had here, think of 28 inches on the ground. So I'll start with saying that. So thank you, Bill, for the tremendous work that you've done. As a tribal historic preservation officer, your perspective, passion, and humility are always on full display. You will always be regarded as a special friend and inspiration to the people of Waunakee. So thank you. It's been a great honor for me as the village president and as a resident of Waunakee and an inhabitant in the Tejope ancestral territory to call upon the village to foster relationships with our friends from the Ho-Chunk Nation of Wisconsin. Today, I welcome our distinguished Ho-Chunk representative to Waunakee Village Board Chambers. From the bottom of my heart, I must express my sincere gratitude to our friends from the Ho-Chunk Nation. The work we've done together the past few years has taken a great deal of time, energy, and resources. Please allow me the privilege, one last time as village president, to recite the village's land acknowledgement. The village of Waunakee acknowledges, and by the way, there's a couple words in here that I might mess up. Okay, and I'm sure you guys will help me. Yes? Okay, please. The village of Waunakee acknowledges that the land we occupy is Tejope, ancestral territory of the Hukagra, Ho-Chunk Nation. Huchagra? Hunchagra. I'm doing my best. Hunchungra. People of the sacred voice. Hunchungra, are stewards of these lands and waters since time immemorial. Settlers attempted to forcibly remove them from their homelands by exploiting a series of land concessions and treaties, including the Treaty of 1832. However, the Unkonja, close? Ochankra. Okay, Ochankra resisted these conquests and asserted their sovereignty as a nation. We addressed this trend of disposition by upholding, oh boy. Ochankwaskara, way of life, sovereignty, culture, language, and environmental practices. Acknowledging these atrocities is only the first step towards reconciliation. Through relationship building, education, and action, the village will advocate for a shared future with the Ho-Chunk Nation. Thank you for being part of this each and every time you guys have been here. I appreciate that very much. Now I'd like to invite John Grady to come forward. John and Tracy, who couldn't be here tonight because she's ill, are artists here in Waunakee. The village board commissioned the stainless glass light box to be offered as a gift to the Ho-Chunk Nation of Wisconsin. This gift represents two special events. First, by design, it represents the great experience of the 2022 Ho-Chunk Nation dugout canoe journey that Bill referred to. All panels of the box represent images from scenery from the journey. In fact, the canoe as depicted in the box, on the box, is made from the same tree from which the canoe was dug. Please join me in congratulating the Gradys on this masterful piece of art. Second, this gift represents the event of our village and the Ho-Chunk Nation establishing new and meaningful relationships that will last from this time forward. You guys would come over here. Please accept this gift as a long-lasting symbol of the relationship that we've built together over these last several years. John, would you like to make any comments about this or point anything out to everyone?
No, I think that the modest is said already that this is an honor of the village.
So for the crowd. So, okay, thank you so much. Oh, sure.
Yeah. Oh, well, I'm glad that they didn't make programs for tonight because you'd be looking at your program and saying, that's not President Marlon White Eagle of the Ho-Chunk Nation. They would have had to put one of those slips of papers for the understudy. My name's Casey Brown. I'm the Public Relations Officer for the Ho-Chunk Nation in the Office of the President. Unfortunately, President White Eagle, he did fall ill. But he's going to be hopefully feeling better. He regrets he couldn't make it here tonight, but he did want to make it here. I've shown him pictures of this. It's great. As soon as I first saw this, and it's been great working with everyone here, the folks here at the village. This is just beautiful, and we are going to, I believe, going to be actually, once President White Eagle feels better, we are going to be presenting it, and we're going to have it in our tribal office building, which is in our tribal capital, which is in Black River Falls, which has about 2 feet of snow right now. So we probably couldn't get you all in there, but we're definitely going to have it there. We're going to present it and let everyone be able to see it. And I don't know, where do we want to have it? Bill wants to have it in his office, and I think the president wants to have it in his. So we're going to do some flipping some coins, maybe play moccasin game to figure out who gets it. But again, thank you so much for this just wonderful honor, and also for just moving forward with the village of Waunakee and everything that we have waiting for us in the future. Thank you so much. Pina Giki.
I'm gonna unplug this thing and you guys can take it with you. Kylie, you don't want to let them take it, do you? You want to keep it here? Yeah.
Now it comes to way.
Okay. So moving on, we're going to be going right to our public hearings, number 2. Public hearing and discussion action on a request by Village on Main LLC to convert first floor commercial space into a commercial condominium at 703 West Main Street. Tim, are you introducing?
Yeah, thanks, Chris. The applicant does wish to convert the existing commercial space, as you mentioned, at 703 West Main into a commercial condominium plat. The use of the space will not be changing, merely the ownership. So there's nothing in conflict with our agreement with them from a couple years ago, and the commercial space, as I mentioned, is not changing. So included in the packet, which the materials are found on pages 63 through 127, included are the condo plat, the declarations, and the bylaws, and staff is recommending approval.
Okay, then we need to open up our public hearing. Are there any forms that were turned in?
Not for this item.
Is there anyone that's online that has their hand up?
There's no hands raised at the moment.
Is there anyone online?
One person online who I believe is here for the next hearing.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, anyone? Okay, seeing and hearing none, I'm going to close the public hearing. Board members, questions, comments, or motions?
I will move to approve the commercial condominium plat subject to final review by the Community Development Director and Village Attorney.
Motion by Sam Kaufman,
Second.
second by Joe Zilzberger. Any other comments or questions? Call the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Okay, next we have public hearing and discussion action on final draft lighting ordinance amendments. Tim?
Thank you. Materials for this item are found on pages 128 through 141 of your packet. This is a new chapter in the village's zoning code that would create lighting standards found essentially in one place. The Plan Commission recommended approval of the ordinance at their meeting last week. Included in the packet are some comments from school district members. The version that you see before you is the one that the Plan Commission did recommend approval. So just a note from the standpoint of the zoning administrator, this would be a huge benefit from an administration standpoint, as well as transparency to the development community to let folks know what our standards are, so they can make more efficient plans that are more consistent with dark sky standards. Staff is recommending approval.
Okay, thanks, Tim. So I'm going to open up the public hearing. Any comments or forms turned in for this?
None for this.
Anyone like to make any comments? Okay, seeing and hearing none, I'm going to close the public hearing.
And just to clarify, there were no hands on this item.
Thank you, Ted.
Yep.
Board members, any comments, questions, or motions?
One quick comment, it's nice that it's stated in here, that a lot of people don't realize is that lighting in these areas like parking lots and then buildings and et cetera is not allowed to escape the property. So it doesn't radiate out. All the light has to stay in. And there's some people that were kind of concerned about a recent addition downtown, but that light will not shine into their property. It'll just illuminate what it is. So that given, I'll move approval of the lighting ordinance.
Okay, we have a motion by Phil Willems. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Aaron Moran. Any other comments or questions? Okay, remind you to push your buttons. Call the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No.
Okay. Motion passes. Next, we have under, Todd, do we want to do the business item in concurrence or how do we want to do this with the public hearing?
I believe the plan is to hold, take care of the business item one. Because that's sort of a hinge, if not for that, the next step, the hearing.
Perfect then. So we're going to discuss and take action on annexation ordinance and annexation agreement, 40 acres adjacent to the Waunakee Intermediate School on Woodland Drive and rezoning of the property to the A1 Agricultural Holding District. So Tim, are you introducing again? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chris. Bear with me a second. Hopefully my screen will shift. There we go. Okay, what you're seeing on the screen is the overall development, the proposed development for Kilkenny Farms West, but this particular agenda item, the materials are found on pages 142 to 172 of the packet. This particular item involves the 40-acre parcel as shown in blue on the screen, the southwest portion of this area. So this request involves two things, action on an annexation petition to bring this 40-acre parcel into the village, and with it, an annexation agreement. So there are two separate motions with this particular request. As presented, staff is recommending approval.
Board members, comments or questions? Gary, any comments, questions?
No, it's approved at the planning commission.
Nyla, any comments or questions?
Just want to listen before I ask any questions. Thank you.
Sure. Phil,
No comments or questions.
Aaron,
Not right now.
Sam,
None for this item. My comments are for the next.
Joe?
No, it's pretty straightforward.
Okay. Nyla, you didn't get a lot to work with there. As far as things, do you have any comments or anything you'd like to make? Okay. Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the annexation ordinance contingent upon execution of the annexation agreement by the Dalmatian Farm LLC and the village.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the first motion. Any other comments or questions? Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. And then we have another motion.
Motion to approve the annexation agreement with the village and Dalmatian Farm LLC subject to final review and approval by the village attorney, conditioned upon approval by the village utility commission.
Okay, we have a motion by Sam Kaufman,
Second.
second by Phil Williams. Any other comments or questions? Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Okay, then we're going to go to our, excuse me, public hearing and discussion action on a request by Kilkenny Farms LLC for preliminary plat, general development plat, and specific implementation plan for Kilkenny Farms West subdivision, south of Woodland Drive and west of South Century Avenue. Tim?
Oh, thanks, Chris. So still on the screen is the entire development. The lands are bounded on the east by South Century Avenue, on the north by Woodland Drive, and then at the southwest by this recently annexed 40-acre parcel. The applicant is seeking approval of a GDP and SIP in the preliminary plat for this development. I would note that the SIP as presented was approved subject to final review of the village engineer, a community development director and village attorney at the plan commission last week. The SIP portion for the residential piece was approved. So that essentially is set, providing the approval of the GDP here. So the GDP itself and preliminary plat consists of 324 total lots, consisting of 281 residential lots, 2 commercial lots, 1 mixed use lot, and 40 outlots. And the 40 outlots are intended to fulfill open space and stormwater management requirements. As noted in the staff materials, there are a couple of items that were discussed at the plan commission as well as at the joint plan commission. One of them involved a proposed use for the what's called the mixed use lot at the corner of Woodland Drive and South Century, is shown in red on the screen. The GDP included in the GDP draft is language that would allow multifamily residential use. This was determined to be consistent with the comprehensive plan. However, the plan commission recommended that that particular use, multifamily use, include a component of commercial use and be regulated through the conditional use process. So that was one of the things that came out of the Plan Commission. Another thing, and it was mentioned earlier tonight, is a traffic impact analysis. The village consulting engineer recommended a traffic impact analysis be studied prior to final approvals. The recommendation coming out of the Plan Commission was such that any of the recommendations coming from the TIA would be included in the final plan set, including the final plat, which would come before this body as well. One of the other things that was discussed was some of the standards associated with the GDP and SIP, the GDP in particular. I handed out before you hard copies of materials provided, I believe it was earlier today by the applicant's attorney that spoke specifically to the waivers that are being asked for relative to the zoning criteria. And staff is satisfied with these changes as presented. So we are comfortable with these changes. Staff is recommending approval. However, again, as noted, the motions are in your packet, page 16. I believe it's 16 of the packet. Two separate motions, or I'm sorry, one separate motion. The motion regarding the SIP, as I mentioned earlier, was made already by the Plan Commission. So the motion as noted on page 16, and staff is recommending approval, available for questions.
Okay, thanks, Tim. So I'm going to open up our public hearing at this time. And Todd, I think you said there was somebody that was online. So let's pull that person right away.
Yeah, I would note there's two individuals on as attendees. If either of them wish to make public comments, please click the raise hand feature on Zoom and we will allow you the opportunity to speak.
Okay, so Todd, you'll keep track of that. Carla.
We have Robert McPherson at 1703 Alexandria Court.
Good evening. I have a few questions that, unfortunately, I think because the public wasn't able to see the copy of the document that was handed out today, having attended the Plan Commission, had some questions from other people in the public as well about the final comparison for the items that were being asked for, since this is being done as a PUD. So just hoping that we can get some of that shared with the public tonight. Obviously, there can't really be time for public feedback on that since we haven't seen it. If you wanted to consider delaying it another meeting, it would be interesting choice to let the public to give a chance to let them digest that. The other item that I wanted to ask about was if we could also, from the public's perspective, get some more color around the land swap, the value that went into that, how much of that is expected to offset the sewer improvements that the village agreed to pay for as a result of that. I think I saw it was in the annexation agreement. It was about $180,000. I may be wrong. And then finally, question from the public as well, just about we've seen in other PUD developments that we have allowed in exchange for PUD improvements have been made to roads that abut to these developments, considering the traffic problems that already exist with the existing school and the fact that there's a second school that's going to be put in right there next to it. Just wondering if the village had given any consideration towards asking towards some improvements to the road in that area that might help with future traffic issues once that school gets online. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I just ask you a quick clarification?
Yeah.
When you say the roads, do you mean Woodland Drive specifically?
Yeah, sorry, Woodland Drive. Not Q.
Okay.
Not that has just been redone, so yes.
Thank you. Carla?
No further comments.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, then I'm going to close our public hearing. Board members, questions, comments. I'll start with Sam this time.
Well, my biggest concern with what we have here is overall development is consistent with the comprehensive plan, but sort of those southeasternmost 5 court access lots are identified in the comprehensive plan as commercial on the future land use map. And I want to make sure that we are consistent with our comprehensive plan with that. I'd like to see those 5 converted into a commercial lot, so we're consistent.
Tim, can you, so that everybody knows where you're talking about, maybe you could go up to point?
Between the funeral home and the church there, yep, right there, it's being circled there.
Okay, thank you. Nyla?
I'll listen for a while.
Okay, Gary,
No comment.
Joe,
And
Aaron?
All right now. Fine.
Bill?
I have no comments.
Okay, so my comments, Woodland Drive, which was mentioned, with this subdivision, is there anything that's happening to upgrade Woodland Drive or do anything with that? That the developer is responsible for?
At this point, it's unknown. The TIA traffic impact analysis would point that out. And if any improvements are known, as came out of the plan commission, those would be the responsibility of the applicant, the improvements based on the TIA.
Okay, and then the other question in regards to our form that we received today. Anything that you want to point out, Tim, or things that would be concerning to you?
No, nothing's really is concerning. It just really clarifies. This is meant as a supplement to the GDP and would be part of that, but it really clarifies the dimensional matters in terms of what the current code allows versus what they're asking for, the uses on the various areas, whether they're single family or commercial, et cetera. So what was provided in here was a greater level of detail that I think is a important piece of a GDP, and I'm comfortable with what's in here.
Okay, and then I had one question in regards to the South Holiday Drive, right across from the mixed use. You've got a bank of houses there. It looks like about 8. Will their driveways be on which side?
I believe some representatives of the applicant are here, so correct me if I'm wrong. I believe that the driveways would be on A Street, which is on the southwest side. Did I say that right, Matt?
yeah, Matt Schreiner with Three Baker Associates, the civil engineer on the project. So yeah, all the driveways will be along Street A, and we will put an access restriction on the plat for all of those lots so that no driveways can come off of South Holiday.
Perfect. I just wanted to make sure from a busy side with that mixed use on that side, more traffic on that road, that'll be a busier road, that there was no driveways going out into that. So great. Those are my only questions. Nella, did you have any yet? Okay, just want to make sure. Okay. Then we'd look for a motion.
Before we get to that motion,
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm wondering if the applicant could address the 5 lots that Sam brought up. Sure. So right now we have 5 different districts proposed for this master plan. The lots that are court access down there, I believe are District 2. Right now, they're planned to be residential lots. They could have single family development on them, so a single lot, or they could be a duplex. That's provided in the GDP and the text in there on, the market conditions would kind of dictate how those would be developed. Right now, there's an existing single family house it's kind of like a flag that comes out to Highway Q. You can see like a pond right there. So that lot right now is basically strategically positioned around that existing single family house. So that's how that lot has been configured. And then with that lot in place, there's only about 120 feet from that lot to the existing funeral home site that's to the north of there. It's not really an effective width to put in some type of commercial or mixed use lot. So with the existing house staying where it's at, and with the resulting width of the from that lot or that house to the funeral home to the north, it didn't make sense to put in a different type of use and kind of squeeze it in there. So what we've provided in the GDP for that particular area is that anything that's up against Highway Q is going to have a buffer of at least 25 feet that would be landscaped with a raised berm and landscaping to provide a setback, if you will, so that there's no residential immediately adjacent to Highway Q.
Okay.
Yeah.
And thank you, Joe, for bringing that up. Sorry, Sam, I did miss that. Did you have a comment?
Yeah, I was gonna say it, in that same reference, the comprehensive plan, I do have the comprehensive plan map available to show if the board does want to see it. Let me know.
Why don't you go ahead and show it, Todd?
And I believe. Whoop, and my mouse, I believe this is the area, right? This blue parcel is institutional. That would be the church property. And that's that's identified in our comp plan as is a transitional mixed use commercial.
Yeah, commercial adjacent to Century Avenue, and then mixed use as you grade in toward the residential uses to the west.
And the existing house sits in there, correct?
Yes.
Okay, thanks, Todd. And there was one question in regards to Robert. I missed one. I didn't get it written down, but I think it was in regards to the land for where the water tower, is that right?
Yeah.
Where the water tower and water basin was. And I think the question is the values between the two,
Yeah.
that and the improvements. So do we have those numbers available to us this evening?
Bear with me a moment.
Do you have those numbers handy? What's your, if you do, you got to go up to the podium, Don. Go ahead.
Hello, Don Tierney, along with Jerry and the family, we're the developers. When I first met Herb and Eileen Stotts, they said, Mr. Tierney, there's something very important to us. Our neighbor, our friends, the Presbyterian Church next door, we want to change things around, give them a little more land. In other words, when you go in the driveway. So we worked with the Presbyterian Church. The other thing we met with the church was to get them a road out to the west. And in other words, when you drive in that little driveway up to Herb and Eileen's home, that strip of land to the left, they own that, but it was important to them that they would work with their neighbor, the church. And the reason I bring that up is so when we did the design, it really didn't leave a lot of room for a commercial spot. And the other thing is they've done a great job of taking care of the yard and everything. So we actually, it'll be a lot kind of a warmer, friendlier around the church and the funeral home to put the courtyard homes in there. And that way, one of the courtyard lots is actually their home. So thank you.
Okay, Tim, do you have those numbers?
Not yet.
How many acres was it?
It's just under 1.5.
And do we know what the improvements were?
Improvements on outlot 13 in the plat, I think is the lot we're referring to.
Correct.
That's an area, here, bear with me a second. I'm gonna see if I can. Well. We coming up in a moment. So that's, okay, it's actually, the gross is 1.92. So the lot right here, hopefully you can see my cursor. Approximately centrally located in the plat. That's the lot identified for potential municipal well site and some type of water storage, be it a water tower or storage tank, underground storage tank. But that green space area would be the site for that particular.
But as far as
So
the cost,
The question in
cost.
terms of cost, again, I'm having difficulty finding the exact number, but, and I believe this was discussed in closed session at village board, but the offset would be at least in the village's favor, meaning an even swap or to the advantage of the village. But I can't give you an exact dollar amount at this time.
Nor should you, since it was done in closed session until we're completed here. So, but the way to describe it as you have is that it is in the village's favor more so.
Correct.
Jerry, go ahead.
Jerry Tierney with Kilkenny Farms West here. I was just gonna ask Tim if you'd like to expand on we were asked to provide a place potentially for the village to put a water well and potentially water storage. And initially, and these things get moved around, but initially we did pick a site more along Highway Q, and we were fine with that. And the utilities people kicked it around, and there's a lot of rules to where water wells can be associated with so far away from gas stations and other things. And they drew a bunch of circles, and kind of the prime spot for that to be ended up adjacent to a park we already had planned. So where that park is bigger, we decided to take a lot out, and if I could point to it.
Mhm.
Right here. And everybody agreed that that would be the prime spot to put it, so we just took a lot out and added it to it. That's about all I have to say, unless there's other questions.
Yeah, I think based on this Strand, when they did their initial studies, this is the spot they had identified as where it was most appropriate for a water tower. And the easiest way for me to give an example is probably our water tower Park Hill over on this Letting Hill Park. This is roughly the same kind of concept right now that's going to be right there. So that's my feeling on that one. So other questions? Go ahead, Nyla.
This question has to do with, I believe, what looks like a finger there. Is that wetlands? I'm just trying, in the corner. Yeah,
Inside the blue box?
yeah, is that wetland area? What is that?
It is, yeah. So we've had a wetland delineation completed for the project. And that really is, kind of what drove the entire design of this master plan. Starting out in that corner, we're looking at the natural features of the land. Right now, there's a draw and kind of a low valley and then a high point that kind of heads from this southwest corner all the way to the northeast corner. And that's really how we started laying out the lots, laying out all of our stormwater facilities, drainage and the like. And so obviously protecting that wetland was the first thing we looked at. So we have a 75-foot environmental corridor all the way around that wetland. So we looked at where water needed to go, how we could connect the parks and the trails to that complex. And that was kind of the basis of how we started the design.
Thank you.
Yep.
Other questions?
If I could address the TIA comment really quick.
Sure.
Most of you probably recall that this site, this mixed use site in the upper right was contemplated to be a grocery store once upon a time. And there was actually a traffic impact analysis that was done back when that grocery store was being contemplated. That study was completed. It did contemplate a grocery store, which is a pretty high trip generation use. 2 commercial lots, basically where we have them now, and then about 40 acres of single family residential development. So that TIA was completed. The intersection of Peaceful Valley and Highway Q, of Lone Silo Lane and Highway Q, and then the intersection of South Holiday. And I believe those were the 3 main intersections studied as part of that, as that analysis was done previously. And they recommended improvements to some of the signal times, and they laid out the geometry for those 3 intersections. And that design has been carried forward with this design. So we are working on updating a TIA right now, but we're not anticipating that the amount of trips are going to be generated by the rest of this single family development would change some of the guidelines that were represented in that 2019 TIA. So we feel pretty comfortable that the intersections as designed and that you see in front of you are gonna be adequate for the amount of trips out here. But we are gonna have that study done. We're planning to have it done this month, and it will be incorporated into any final plat that we bring forward in front of you. And then just to comment on the Woodland improvements, we are going to be fully improving the south side of Woodland Drive. So it will go from, you know, a gravel edge with a ditch to curb and gutter and full improvements along that section of Woodland.
Okay, thanks. Looking for any motions or questions?
I have a question. I might have just completely missed this in your comment, but the traffic will include the elementary school that's not built yet, or
Yes.
for the middle?
Yeah, so the study's being updated to include obviously the rest of the residential that wasn't in the
Yeah.
2019, but it will include Heritage Elementary.
Okay.
So the trips that are planned to be generated from that school.
Thank you.
I'd make a motion to move to approve the preliminary plat and general development plan for Kilkenny Farms West, subject to final review and approval by the Community Development Director and Village Attorney, and a multifamily use on the mixed-use portion of the project to be conditional use and contain a commercial component that recommendations of a traffic impact analysis, if any, be incorporated into the satisfaction of the Community Development Director and conditioned upon annexation of the Becker Jack 40-acre property to the village and the execution of a phase 1 development agreement for the Kilkenny West development.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
So motion by Gary Hertzberg, second by Phil Willems. Any other comments? Tim's got his hand up. Go ahead, Tim.
One quick clarification. So in the motion, Gary mentioned the condition upon annexation of Becker Jack.
Which is
And
we
you
already
just
did.
took that action, so that can be stricken.
Yep. Okay. All right, I'm gonna call the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Thanks, everybody. Okay, next we have discuss and take action on results from the Police Department Building Study Phase 2. Adam, are you presenting or?
I'm gonna have John talk first, and I can help answer any questions after.
Go ahead. Maybe introduce your name and so on and so forth.
John Wallenkamp, CUNY Architects, 7305 West Wisconsin Avenue, Wauwatosa, Wisconsin. Good evening.
Good evening.
And John, I'm controlling the screen here, so let me know if you need any zoom in or
Great.
move to another page, just let me know.
So quite a few months ago, we came forward in front of you with the program that was done. Based on that program, it was approved to proceed to the next phase, design development, to kind of further define what needs to go into the building, different improvements, and actually help redefine the project budget to take further action. The image in front of you, the red is what's proposed as an addition. There's about 9,800 square foot scheduled to be added to the little over 13,000 square foot existing police station. Right is to the north. The green you're seeing on there is existing parking lot that's to the north facility. That'll be completely removed with the addition to the west being the new parking and circulation patterns to the building. Part of that review of the design development phase, we did meet with staff and find out that we did need to incorporate stormwater on the site. So the pond that you're seeing is just a placeholder. Where exactly that goes would be further developed. But part of the cost estimate in the budgeting and the site area that's being taken up, stormwater management will be included and upgraded for the site based on the additional square footage that's going to be added to the building. Next slide. So what we did is started with that existing boilerplate of the existing footprint and continued meetings with staff. Staff did site visits to other facilities with newer upgrades to us further define the program that was originally studied to come up with the exact details of what needed to go into the facility. Next slide. So that 9,800 square foot addition, as we talked about earlier, you can kind of see it incorporated in how it's circumferenced the existing building, expanding on an additional training room. The existing training conference room that's there is going to be expanded to what we're going to call behind the scenes police, kind of out of the public realm. That's off to the left. That'd be detective areas. So pretty much all the areas within the building, every square foot's been reanalyzed and reprogrammed to what it's going to be used for to make sure it's highly used as the most efficient possible way. The major addition to the right, to the north, is for evidence storage, additional squad parking. And really the plan was to look at not just for the 10, but 15, 20 years out to make sure we don't have to expand the facility soon after we complete the program. So what's in front of you is also, it's about 1,300 square foot additional to what was originally proposed. And that was through different case studies, movement, chief checking on how they wanted to maneuver within the garage. So that 1,300 square foot really added on the right-hand side, mainly in the garage, to give safe movements in and out of the facility for the squads. So really the big change in square footage just is the Sallyport area. We'll talk. Next slide. The complete facility was analyzed for furniture. So you'll see multiple plans in here. Every room was allocated what was in there for furniture, what we had exist that we could reuse. So then the budget that's at the end of the presentation includes that piece. So literally we've taken every spot and populated the furniture needs that would go in those spaces. Really that helps the chief and the department making sure the functions that he anticipates happening in those spaces can really function and happen properly. Next slide. So that's the southern half of the building. This is the northern half. Next slide. This map here, when we got into the mechanical reviews, really was important to figure out exactly how the department saw the building operating mechanically, who gets thermostats, who doesn't. So we kind of worked back and forth with the budget that it's not reality to have every office have its own thermostat. So we worked with the department on which zones would have thermostats. So each color you're seeing here represents a thermostat control. There again, that's helping us dial in the budget numbers when we present them. Next slide. Giving them interior views, what's it's going to look like, the heights, how the furniture fits. So just high level. And then these again will be taken to the next level as the project moves forward into construction document phase, just to make sure the department knows what they're getting. We've analyzed every door, what type of window would be in it, just to make sure that the department knew what they would be getting. Next slide. These were the big components because these are pieces that sometimes overlooked, and it's regarding security, whether it's card readers and cameras. So we went in depth where exactly every camera would go, which doors got card readers, because they come with large ticket items, each item, and then it's allocated in the budget. So we went through that entire plan multiple times to make sure what we put in the plan, what we put in the budget is what they're going to need when they move into the facility. You can zoom into the. If you can just zoom into the top one, just so high level, what you're going to see is the top piece really just is when people talk building square footage and cost, that's your line item. That's the very far right under building related items, the $3.2 million to $3.5 million. That's strictly building costs. When you hear in the industry, what does buildings going to cost? That's usually what you're hearing. So that's why we broke it out that way. The specialty items is exactly the furnishings and fixtures, the camera systems, radio systems, all those are captured and covered in that line item that's in blue. Then subtotal. Project costs are other fees kind of outside of a contractor's bid. A&E fees, professional fees, site plan review fees, any upgrade we have to do the electric and gas because of the additional service, geotechnical and builder's risk. Those are other pieces that we call project cost. Pretty much the goal is to show you the complete end project cost. That's added in there. These are all current day numbers. So as we showed you back in, I think it's been 6 months, those numbers, these include the inflation that we've been going through today. So the larger orange numbers is if we go forward with the project in the next year. The bottom number in blue is really just trying to show you is if we wait an additional year or two, just so you know what those values are. And that's at 3.9% inflation. That's standard inflation. That's not what we've had the last year and a half. That's typical what you would see in a building inflation. So we just wanted to show you on the low end, waiting what it would cost. And it's anywhere from $350,000 to $400,000 for waiting those additional years if inflation truly stays at the 3.9%. Any questions what I've gone over so far?
Board members, any questions?
Good.
Looks like we're good.
Yeah,
Ed?
so really what we're tonight is just to give you these numbers, and these, depending on what you want to go, the next slide just tells you what would be the next level you would go to, and that'd be construction documents. So those numbers that I have above have contingencies in them and everything. So it's really up to the board when they want to proceed. But the next phase would what we call phase 3, and the numbers would be laid out that way for you.
From an architectural standpoint, is there anything that you would say, man, I wish we'd have had this that we could have worked with? Other than space, people always want more space, but
I think the department did a great job reaching out beyond us and got other input from other departments, went to see them with their own eyes to make sure, because that did tweak quite a bit of things within the envelope. It really didn't change cost, but what it did, it made sure we right-sized everything and got things where the department needed them. We're starting with a fairly good box. It's just unfortunately not right-sized for what the department needs. So envelope wise, we're starting with a good box. Mechanically, for the HVAC system, this proposal in front of you upgrades all of that. It upgrades the electrical services where we need it and all the low voltage. So it's going to bring it back up for the next 25 years. So we're pretty lucky. Like I said, we started with a good box. It just was inadequate in space.
thank you. Renee, from a budget standpoint, where do we have this allotted or slated?
So in our capital improvements plan, there's been a pretty old placeholder in 2026. Obviously not these dollars either. So that's where it's been sitting for many years as a 2026 possibility.
Okay, thank you. Future board, you'll have that to contemplate. As we go, Adam, do you have any comments you want to make?
Certainly we'll follow any timeline the board wants to follow. I mean, as far as where we're at from a space point right now, there's a few areas that are certainly getting tighter than others. The things that come to mind, mostly the biggest one is our evidence room is pretty tight. We have our evidence custodians going through that as quickly as they can. There's just time limits that we have to hold on to certain things. So that room is very tight. I was in there last week, kind of checking out where our space was again, and we're like one good search warrant away from being pretty compacted. There's other areas, our garage is very tight as well. Just as we've continued to grow and we add cars, we need to put those places. Hard part about putting them outside is obviously a security portion. Number two, a lot of electronics, we're keeping Narcan, things like that, things that we don't want to have to empty a car out to go park it outside. So those areas are tight. The drawing's not up here right now, but we need to keep a space for evidentiary purposes for an entire car. There was a time where, either the county would house that for us or we had a facility where we could put that. We don't have that anymore. If we ended up in some type of a major case where we need to take a car, we are holding that for almost a year. I think the last one we had for a year, that takes up quite a bit of space until the case is closed. So I will go with whatever plan the village board wants as far as timing. If you were asking me my preference, I would love to see it moved up a year, maybe to 25. But certainly I'll leave the financing decisions to you guys.
Chris, if I could jump in with that last comment by Chief Kreitzman in mind, I wonder if we could have Renee touch on our borrowing timing as we're looking forward the next couple of years, and then what would be our appropriate steps to take if the board wanted to move up a project like this with revised numbers as we're seeing here?
So our next planned borrowing would be 2024. Because we've been borrowing every other year. So that would, so if it was moved up to say 2025, the money would actually be borrowed in 2024 for that process. So as I said, the placeholder that was in there, and it's a much smaller amount because it's been in there for years. Probably we would recommend having Ellers update our financial management plan, which includes the capital. You know, I was planning to do that sometime this year. Unfortunately, Jonathan from Ellers, who's been working on our plan, no longer is with Ellers. So we need to figure out from Todd Taves who our helper would be to update that plan. But you know, I think that might be a good step too, just to get that plan updated to see how the whole picture fits together. But if it was a 2026 project, that borrowing would happen around that time. But if it was moved up to either 25 or 24, that borrowing would happen next year.
To receive general direction from the board today, to take that step with Ellers to revise the financial modeling plan, would that be helpful to hear from the board?
Well, it's already in the budget to update that annually.
Okay.
So we just need to get with them to figure that out. And I have reached out to the department heads to get some preliminary numbers for the next 10 years out, so that we can also do that project anyway, irregardless of this police station improvement.
Thanks, Renee. Board members, any comments or questions? Joe?
I'll start by noting that the police committee was, I guess, very happy with what we saw. I'm a little bit curious about the borrowing for 2024. If that's the timeline for how that would work, would we be better off doing this project starting in 24 or?
I had given that a little bit of thought, not necessarily moving it up to 2024, but I don't know that, you know, the bidding and all of that stuff would have actually taken place. So I think that what would probably happen, which kind of happened with the library, is we had a couple different borrowings. So in 24 and 25, we would have the significant chunk borrowed, but since we wouldn't necessarily know exact costs if it wasn't bid out for a time, then we could catch up in the 2026 borrowing.
Okay.
For whatever was remaining.
Okay. And then one other question, I guess, as far as what we could do this evening, that next step, what is that additional cost?
The big thing is really to determine if it's 2026, there's really no sense to move forward rapidly with construction drawings.
Okay.
You know, there's no reason to get construction documents ready and just put them on the shelf.
Sure.
Just because technology changes, different things change. So I wouldn't go, you know, there's no rush to do that. What I would say is if it does go to 2026, you'd want to revisit it probably in a year, because I'm using that 3.9% inflation factor, so we can kind of help track what the inflation factors really are. So we're not misled when we go to do the borrowing and we're saying, well, what happened? So, but yeah, so if it's not going to be in a 24, 25 project, there's no reason to push it into construction documents. You know, you just want to give yourself a year for that whole process. So.
And if it is going to be 25, is that something we're moving on now, or?
Yeah,
we wait until?
then you'd want to start moving on it. Yeah, so you're not rushing and you can lay out the whole game plan for the bidding piece.
Okay.
Gary?
No, I mean, I think it's time sooner than later. I know they're cramped over there. And as we need additional officers, it's not going to get any better. So it's a future board decision, but I would support that we start looking at this pretty hard.
Aaron?
Yeah, thank you for all your work. I would also agree. I think moving it sooner is probably the better call, at least being prepared to earlier in the meeting when we annex more land and the village grows. You guys are gonna have that need sooner. So I think that would be better to just do it right away, but not right away, but push it up.
Pam?
I'd like to see construction moved up to 2025, but obviously several of you are not going to be on this board any longer, so I'd like to let a future board decide that rather than this evening.
Nyla?
I work on the police committee, and what I've seen is that, yes, the needs of the staff is growing because of the staff itself is growing, but also the needs of the staff is growing. Instead of it basically being a male-only unit, we also have female police officers who have needs such as a place, if they're nursing, to go take care of those needs. So there are a lot of needs that we may initially think of, but there's also a lot of hidden needs. So I see a need to move on with this sooner rather than later. But also I would like the input of the new board to be in on those decisions.
Phil?
Definitely move it forward.
So thank you for bringing this all this information. And I'll just say that as a village board member, village board president, one of our duties is to make sure for public security and safety over everything else. And I'm hoping that the future board is going to push this forward so it can get done as soon as possible. Simply because we're growing and that puts more strains on our staff. And if they don't have the space to operate in effectively and efficiently, we're in trouble there. So I would say, I don't think we're going to make a decision tonight, but I think that future board is going to do that soon. At least I hope they take action soon. Todd, any comments from you?
I was curious, do you have a best, I know we have to find the right staff member at Ellers to help us with the next step. But I think that will be an incredibly important piece of a product for our next board to make the next best decisions. Do you have an estimate, Renee, on when you think we might be able to finish up the process?
Well, since we haven't even started the process, but like I said, I've asked the departments to give me their updated numbers in mid-May. Give them about a month to pull that together. And now that we have this, we can put this in for the placeholder for the police department. And I'm trying to think of the last update. Well, for the aquatic center, we went through many renditions, but I would think it would take about another month or so if Ellers has a person in place to take over that work. I can contact Ellers to see what their availability is.
Yeah,
so it'd probably be early summer, I would guess.
I was gonna guess a couple of months of Ellers work.
Because there usually is some back and forth, and if they have somebody new doing it, there might be a little more learning curve with our particular plan. So I'm guessing it'll be a few months from now would be the earliest to have that piece. And again, I guess maybe we would need some direction if the board wanted to move it up to a different year. That will have large impacts. So if the future board wanted to at least maybe give guidance on that piece, that might be something that could be done sooner.
Okay, thanks, Renee. Renee, could you share what that 26 placeholder was compared to what it is now?
Again, it's been in there for many years. It was 900,000.
Okay.
Many years before I was.
Right. Yes. Way
Adam,
before
Adam, you
was
can only blame the prior chief for 2 years. So, yeah, you're out of time.
All right, thank you, guys. All right, next we have discuss and take action on resolution to modify appointment terms for members of the Create Waunakee Committee. Todd?
Thank you. So by resolution, the village board created the Create Waunakee Committee back in 2019. And at that time, we created a 9-member committee with all 1-year terms. What we found to be really unique about this particular committee as opposed to others is and Erin can help me here because she's the chair of the committee. This isn't a coming to your monthly meeting and giving some advice on a policy or program and then not doing anything until you come back the next month. This is a committee full of doers. These folks are involved in ongoing projects and specialty areas all year long, recurring projects year after year. So the reaction we get when we ask our committee members to do their annual re-up is, are you serious? Didn't we just do that? We've got these projects ongoing, we're working continuously, and all of a sudden this is there again. So it's not unusual with the different committee makeups that we have in our organization here to not always just be a yearly basis appointment. So that's why you see this suggestion, a resolution to stagger that by incorporating 3 one-year terms, 3 two-year terms, and then 3 three-year terms into the makeup of the committee. We think that will sustain the committee really well. They all, in talking to them last week, Erin and I did, they all felt like that was a very meaningful change that they'd be in support of. The only modification to the resolution, as I had proposed, is to replace we reserved a position for a school district representative to one of those terms. What we found is that that's a very difficult position to fill because they're very busy teaching our kids. And we would recommend replacing that as making that a regular appointment of a citizen member as opposed to a school district rep. What I can tell you is that the engagement with the school district in Create Waunakee projects has been ongoing and continuous, which to me, a representative from the district on the committee wouldn't make a difference to how much we're engaging the district already. It is an ongoing active process. So that would be the only addition to the resolution as proposed. We have it here tonight because your incoming president will be making recommendations in a mere 2 weeks. And we wish for this to be a modification to be made for those new appointments.
Board members, any comments, questions? I think it's completely appropriate for what Todd's presented tonight, but you may feel different, so I'll go ahead.
Oh, can I just hop on Todd's comments? Yeah, I think the school board or the school district removing the requirement for that person to be school board representative. It's been, vacant. And also I think the range of things to do at Create Waunakee is the range of ways people express creativity. And so having one person represent all of the creative avenues of the school district too is kind of where that also we haven't found success. It could be arts, music, dance, all that stuff. So I think having that extra body of doers, as Todd said, I think there was a lot of relief too of these. A lot of our committee members are doing like multi-year projects or big events, and kind of being able to like pass that on as the terms are staggered would be huge. Some of them, having shorter commitments was more attractive, and some having that longer one. So I thank everyone for this. It was a good change.
So do you have a motion with that?
I would love to make the motion I move to improve the resolution to modify appointment terms for members of the Create Waunakee committee, including getting rid of the school district representative need in the resolution.
So we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by Aaron Moran, second by Phil Willems. I will just say, I don't like the terminology of getting rid of the school board person, but I'll just modify that we no longer are in need. Is that a friendly amendment, Nathan?
Have it, love it.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments, Joe?
Yeah, got a couple of them. As I read through this, it seems to me that we're staggering the terms at this point. Are we looking to go ultimately to everybody is 3 years so that we've got 3 turning over?
No, that's not the plan. And I did ask that of the Create Waunakee committee when we met last week, what they thought of that idea. They feel that to attract new members to the committee, the notion of a 3-year term out of the gate might be daunting for new additions. That's why they like the thought that there'd be 1-year opportunities, which maybe then could evolve for members of the committee into multi-year terms with a future reappointment.
Okay.
that's the only reason the committee thought it would be reasonable to have the 1, 2s, and 3s as a mix.
The concern that I see when I look at that is if we go out, I think 6 years, if I've done the math correctly. That means the entire committee is up in 6 years. Now, granted, a lot would probably stay on and whatever, but
I have a prediction based on our experience with the committee thus far. There's probably been 5 or 6 people who, for whatever life reasons, obligation reasons, have chosen to leave mid-term. I predict that that will continue to happen from time to time, and it'll end up becoming a mixed bag of appointments as that proceeds.
okay,
That'd be my prediction.
okay. And I may have missed this. Is it, do we have buy-in from the next president? And is that something that,
It's a good question. And I spoke to her directly about it. She's comfortable with this approach.
I'm okay with her directly answering the question if you'd like.
Okay.
Yeah, Todd and I.
excellent. Okay, that's all I've
You
done.
know, Joe, we use at the Schumacher board, we use a 1, 2, 3-year terms, and I think it's a nice transition. It fits people's, needs if they
Oh,
want to
sure.
serve 1 or 2, and so it's worked well up there.
I just wanted to make sure we're not coming back around a year from now going, okay, now that we've got them staggered, now we're going to turn them all into 3 years. And so,
Sounds
we're
good.
good.
We're good. All right. We have a motion and a second. Any other comments? Call the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. So. Now if I can just find my agenda. So last on our agenda for this evening is remarks for the outgoing village president and trustees. And we didn't draw straws, but Phil has been volunteered by me to go first.
Waunakee's been a pretty special place for Betty and I. When we first got married in 1965, we spent our first, at that time I was with the WT Grant Company, and we had been transferred 7 times in 10 years to 6 different states. Our 3 children are born in different states. And so when we got here, I was managing a WT Grant store in Madison, a company I'd been with for about 20 years. And about 6 months into that, they went bankrupt and I lost my job. That was kind of interesting because I had to find a new career. I tried selling life insurance. That lasted for about 3 weeks. And then I took a job in sales traveling a 4-state area. But I was able to come home every weekend and I got to really like Waunakee. So when it came time to finally realize my lifetime ambition to open a Ben Franklin, and I found out there was going to be a shopping center in Waunakee, I said, oh boy. So I called up Ben Franklin as soon as I saw the sign and told them what I wanted to do. And they said, too bad, somebody's already got that signed up for. Well, luckily for me, he got divorced and lost his share of the money. And I got to open a Ben Franklin. But I've been able to join a community, get on committees, raise 3 children that have gone on to have happy lives, and work with some of the most fantastic people in the world. These last 16 years on the board, all the people in the village from, I won't say top to bottom, I'll say end to end, because there's no bottom in this committee. These staff, they're all good. They're all qualified. They're all polite. They're kind to me. If I ask them for help, they always give it. So all I got to say is thank you, staff, for 16 years. That's it.
And the next one who was volunteered was Gary.
Todd, I don't know if you have these. I put some things together over about the last 20 years of doing this. Over about the last 20 years, I thought of numbers and I was trying to remember from when I started back in the day. And not that I had a lot to do with any of this, but to talk about a little bit just for incoming board members, current board members, planning commission members, how Waunakee has changed. And, Todd and staff did a great job of, looking up numbers and pulling stuff together. And so just a couple slides that quickly go over, I asked about the value of Waunakee. How has it grown? And if you can see there's three main components: residential, commercial, manufacturing, and then there's some additional categories. So if you took those three, and they don't add up to that final number, all categories, but there's some additional small components thrown in there. But if you look at the residential growth in Waunakee in 20 years, from 386 million to $1,810,000,000. I mean, that's the key to Waunakee's success so far. I mean, it's really amazing when you start looking at those kinds of numbers. Our commercial growth has been very steady, manufacturing. So I thought this was just a good slide to really give people a feel for, in 20 years, what Waunakee has done. Go to the next slide. We always talk about the mill rate. And the mill rate's a little bit confusing because you have your assessed values that go with that. And I think, Renee, we're probably about 28%. And isn't the school like 54 or
Yes,
somewhere
I
in there?
think that sounds about right. Yep, the school is over 50%, but we're the next one at about 28%.
28%.
Yep.
So the thing I wanted to show here over 20 years is just the consistency. And people say, yeah, but my taxes have gone up. But I think for everybody in the community, their home is probably one of the most valued assets. And you know what? When your home continues to grow in value, and I would contend that in the last 20 years, the services in this community have kept pace and have even improved. We've increased the level of services. Or most communities that I have friends in that live around, they're amazed when I tell them that, oh yeah, we pick up brush, we pick up leaves every week, we pick up recycling every week. In a lot of communities, they do brush and leaves once a month. Their streets are in terrible condition. So I think this just shows consistency, which is really important, I think, in our growth and why we've been very successful financially. Go ahead. Renee was talking about, and Chris has mentioned this over the years, that public safety is one of our biggest challenges coming forward. If you look at our outstanding debt, we put three columns up there. One is how much is our outstanding debt, going back from, you can see in 2005, it was $30 million. The state limit is, in 2022, the state limit, we could have, borrowed up to $132 million. But our village policy is half of that. And that was created, I believe, back.
I think it was around 2001 in some of the early years.
Right.
On this chart. They started that.
And again, that's been good for our community. It's always kept the board focused on, our debt limit, not the state's debt limit, our debt limit. And that's been really important for us when we start talking about, and we'll talk a little bit more about this, but our Moody's rating and our, when we go out for a borrowing, we're so financially sound based on what we've done over the last 20 years. When we do need to borrow, we're in a very good position with the rating companies to get the lowest possible interest rates when we do have to borrow money. Go ahead. A lot of people don't know anything about Waunakee utilities. Again, Chris has mentioned this number of times. I'm on the committee. You can see the number of customers. We haven't doubled in 22 years, but we've increased quite a bit. But if you look at our revenues, they're up over 300%. our cash investments. We have a utility that is worth 70. Our utility is financially in very good shape. We pay probably the lowest utility rates, I don't know of any communities in the area. So another really important part of the village that most people don't consider is the strength of our utility. I mean, we could sell it tomorrow and we'd be in really good shape. But a lot of that is Tim Herlitzka, and many of you may not know him, but Tim has run our utilities for a number of years, came from a financial background, and he's been really the catalyst to get our utility in great financial position. Pay-go. It's something we've been doing around Waunakee since 2005. And I think I would go back to Dave Ferris. Dave was one of the, he was Renee's predecessor. And I think in dealing with some of the departments head back in the time, they said, how can we make this more consistent? We have to go to borrow every year and we're trying to pull our budgets together. And it was really difficult. And in some cases, we were behind in some areas. And we said, how can we make this more consistent? So pay-go is really building money into our budget, just our annual budget. And that we use that then to fund our projects. Instead of every year borrowing 3 million for this and 2 million for that, we've consistently grown. You can see streets and trails like Public Works from 300,000. We've grown that to 1.2 million. And we borrow that. And Bill Fredericks has been, a big catalyst behind all of this, Public Works and streets, to catch up on our street repairs. We still have people that say, gosh, you haven't gotten to my street yet. There aren't many of those streets left in Waunakee. Again, if you travel different villages and cities around the state of Wisconsin and you drive their streets, we are way ahead. Our contractors that come to Waunakee and do our seal coating and blacktopping tell us that, oh my gosh, you guys are so far ahead of all the other communities we go to, you shouldn't have any concerns. But that pay-go has been one of the best things that our community has done. And again, Sue McDade on the park side has done the same thing. And again, that's allowed us to consistently every year fund projects that we just could never get around to, or we couldn't, figure out how we pull this together and borrow it. Now we have a pay-go project list that the Parks Committee works on. And it's like a wish list of, hey, here's the things we really want to accomplish. And now we have a funding source that's consistent. It's from a budgeting standpoint for Renee and the staff, it makes it much easier to, get things done in the community. Go ahead. Again, just to Sue and, Bill, especially helping with the parks, you can see where we were since the year 2000, how many additional parks we've added. And a lot of them aren't big acreage parks, but one thing Sue really was, strove to do is to make sure that everybody in a community had a park. It didn't have to be a 10-acre park. We had 2-acre parks, but they didn't have anything in them. I think Sue's done a great job of really making sure that everybody in the community had a park where their kids could go and play. So that's been a big addition to us. TIF, I think the TIFs for Waunakee have been tremendously successful. You take the gamble as a board. When you pull a TIF together, you listen to your consultants, your financial advisors. All of our TIFs have been positive. The last TIF we closed helped pay for the affordable housing that just went in by McDonald's. How many TIFs do we have coming due in the next couple of years? We have.
Well, one that has to close and a couple others that are close.
Right. And so the couple that are closest, because they've been so successful, they're gonna close early. Now, the village has a lot of needs coming up, as you can see with Adam talks. So these TIF districts have been a financial gain for the village. They've allowed us to put in infrastructure that wouldn't be here. We've got commercial businesses that wouldn't be here without it. And for the people in this community, it's made Waunakee a much better place to live. Go ahead. And this is just, I think this goes back to 2000. I think the 2003 comp plan. You know, we had kind of made a decision back in 2003 to try to have a housing ratio. And that housing ratio is how many multifamily homes do you have versus single family homes? And you can see, I think back in 2003, we had a policy that said, hey, there should be 75% single family and 25% multifamily. And you can see over the years, as of 2023, I think we're 21 apartments over being at 25%. So there were some years that we were low, but we've caught up in the last probably 4 years, 5 years. So our multifamily to single family ratio is right where we've decided it should be at. And I think all of these things point to the consistency of the village. All the financial things and why they look the way they do is we've had a plan in place, we followed it, and we've been consistent. And I think that's really led to the success of the village. I think that's it. Lastly, and I'll leave somebody out, but I had to do this because kind of like Phil, the staff here, you know, people always say, boy, Waunakee, it's just a great community. And we all think, well, gosh, it's the school system. Well, no, it's us on the village board. That's why it's such a great place. It's really the staff that's here. And it's not only because they do good work here and they're easy to work with. Kind of like anything, when they go to committees, when they're on state committees and they're involved in state organizations, they represent our community. And just to go down through some of the people, Cindy Mosman at the Senior Center, twice served on the Wisconsin Association for Senior Center Board and once was a secretary. Sue McDade, Wisconsin Parks and Rec Association president, board of directors, many community chair positions, and several professional awards from the Wisconsin Parks and Rec Association. Jeff Skog, Wisconsin Park Recreation president and the board of directors, and again, several professional awards from the WPRA. Renee Meinholz. Renee followed Dave Ferris. Dave Ferris was fabulous. He worked hard. He came up with some great ideas to help us move forward, like PAGO and some of these other things. Renee has been the American Women's Society of CPA, the treasurer and the president. And prior to that, she worked for Baker Tilly in the public sector. Tim Herlitzka from the utilities. He's a treasurer and on the board of directors and the treasurer and executive committee for the Municipal Electric Utilities of Wisconsin. Bill Fredericks. Bill back there, he's the most creative guy. He's done more for this community than most people ever know. He's a member of the Public Works Association, Southern Wisconsin Associate Public Works Supervisor member, member of the Waunakee Fire Department. Aaron Yaki, our engineer, American Public Works Association member. In 2018 to 2021, he was the chair of the Scholarship and Education Committee for the Public Works Association. And in 2018, he was the Outstanding New Member Impact Award. Ryan Endress, who now has taken Bill's position at the Public Works. Ryan's member of the Public Works Supervisor membership, part of the Parks and Recreation Association member. And he's a lieutenant on the fire department. some of the folks that work for Ryan. Janelle Ranky. Janelle is the National Wildlife Federation Mayor's Monarch Pledge program. She works out at Schumacher Farm and helps raise monarch butterflies, which I thought was kind of a cool thing. And then we have Josh McWilliams. He's a captain on a fire department. Kurt Aker, Casey Bolzak, and Jerry Reef are also members of the fire department, work on public works. And, you know, Adam, you're like Superman, so I don't know what else to say about you. Eric at the library. I mean, I don't want to leave people out, but these people are on professional organizations. They represent this, the village of Waunakee, and I think they've done a great job.
Hey, let's go.
So with that said, meeting to adjourn?
Oh.
One last thing.
Go ahead.
You know, if you do 20 years of this, about 6 meetings a month. And I gotta thank my wife, Jean.
All right, that's a round of applause right now. So I'm gonna start there because I have to. So we have to be out here by 8 o'clock because my wife teaches 21 first graders tomorrow morning and she goes to bed at 8 o'clock. So the fact that she's here tonight, I thank her for being here and for all that you've done to support me as I've gone through this journey. Both all the positive things that have happened in our community, as well as some of the tough times that we've had that most people don't know about, but that's okay that people don't know about that. So this is something that I live basically all the days. And yeah, he kind of looks like Gary Hertzberg, but anyway, everyone you meet is fighting a battle you know about nothing about. So be kind. We all are going through things in our lives, every single one of us. And remember that when you're talking to people or you're angry with somebody, say something nice. Be nice to them. Even though it might be hard at that moment, you don't know what's going on in their world. There's all kinds of mental health going on out there. And you know what? Everybody up here has mental issues. Doesn't that sound great when you say it about your village board? We do. We all go through things in our personal lives that you're dealing with at different times. And this job can be very difficult. With that, I'm going to move on and you know, Gary thanked a lot of the village staff. The interesting thing in my term here is Carla replaced Julie Helt. Well, after actually not Julie, but Julie was the first one. Julie was amazing. You know, and each time we have Carla, now she's doing great in her role. Gary mentioned Dave Ferris before Renee. Okay, before Todd. We won't mention him, but you know, we had another village administrator, and I'm happy that before Tim we had Kevin Even, before Bill we had John Rademacher in that position, and before Adam we had Kevin Plendel, and before Sue was Sue, so she's really just old. Kidding, Sue, but no, that's you know, to show you change happens throughout, and people have to be able to adapt and adjust to that change. You know, and we have our incoming village president here tonight, and Kristen Runge. So if you haven't met her, try to take an opportunity to do so. We have a village trustee, one of our new village trustees, and Robert McPherson here tonight. Same thing. And Sam was reelected to the board this time. So congratulations to all of you. And you know, you have something in front of you that is both great, but it'll last with you forever. You'll meet so many different people. And I'm just gonna leave with, I'm from Waunakee. I'm a Waunakeean. Okay. And as I grew up, I was always involved in the community, whether it was, you know, just with my teachers. I'll say thank you to all the teachers I had in Waunakee, because you know what? It was a great school system then, just like it's a great school system now. And, you know, it gave me so many opportunities playing sports. I was fortunate. You know, I had a lot of friends that were in sports with me. Just down the street, we played all the time. And, you know, in a lot of sports, there's only 1 or 2 kids that get to actually play. And I was fortunate that I got to be in leadership positions as I was growing up through sports. You know, I can say, if you know anything about sports, I was the point guard on the basketball team. So I got to direct everything. I was the catcher in baseball. So I got to direct everything. I was the quarterback in football. So I got to direct everything. So my sports background actually helped me with this. In addition to going through my college career and going to and having an internship at Lutheran Hospital, I got to teach doctors CPR, and I was the one that got to certify them. I was the intern with the doctor who got to certify them, and they didn't get through unless I passed them. All right, so that was in a position of authority and power. And you know what? This position is not about power at all. The village president position is not a power position. It is a community position. Everything that you do, you look out for the community. Are there going to be decisions? Are there decisions that are made as you go through that some people don't like? Sure. You can't make everybody happy. None of us can as village trustees. Okay. There's going to be topics that come up. And one of the things that I view as, and I'm sure this will, oh no, she's not here anymore. Good. Hopefully it won't be in the Tribune. But I'll say that I do not like social media. And the one thing if I could change in my term as president would be to eliminate right versus left. Because what I wish would go away is people just be Waunakeeans again and not be, I'm a Republican, I'm a Democrat, I'm a Waunakeean. And those are the people that are going to do what Waunakee wants. And I hope that people take that to heart. I'm not saying it's bad to be a Republican. I'm not saying it's bad to be a Democrat. I'm saying it's bad if you use those platforms to fight with one another. Because at the federal level, at the state level, those things are happening all the time. They battle. At our level, I view all of you as my equals, and I don't care what your politics are. I care about you want what's best for Waunakee. And I know that the folks coming in are going to do the same thing. I believe that in my heart to make sure that Waunakee stays great. One of the blessings and curses that happened in my first year as village president is Waunakee was rated one of the top 10 places in the country to raise a family. Do you know how many people went into making that happen? So many people, not just the village board, the schools, the citizens of the community working together, not fighting amongst one another. I want people to join each other in talking through issues, making sure that decisions are made. All of you have a wonderful opportunity that are on the board now. I've had this pleasure for years to be able to talk with people, to meet people, and to learn from people. That's what I'll leave you with. When you folks talk to people, try to look at from their side of the story first, then form your decisions versus you having a set position. Be open about it. And as that sign up there says, everybody you meet is fighting a battle. You're going to have battles. Okay. Don't look at them as a war though. Look at them as I'm just trying to, find a solution to the situation. Last, my children aren't here tonight, but I will say, in addition to my wife, my sister's here tonight. Family members take it harder than you do most of the things that are done out there and said about you. And, for all of that, all the support, I thank all of you for sharing me with the village. To Gary's points, and Gary did a nice presentation of the different things. I view that as those things happened while I was on the board. Okay, I didn't make all of that happen. I helped to make a bunch of that happen. Some of those things that are up there, everybody can take and say, all right, yeah, we grew too fast. Okay, or our values got up too fast. And that's where it is. You know what? We were rated the top 10 place in the country to raise a family. The goal for this board in the future, I hope, is to make it that all people have that opportunity. But as I grew up, as I told you in the community, it was about excellence, trying to always make yourself better, be better. I want to be the best. Okay. I've always wanted the best for Waunakee. Same thing. All right. So policies, people, all of it comes together, and that's how you become the best and you stay the best. Thank you, everybody, for all these years and times. I appreciate it. And with that, Phil, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, he said his athletic career, We never mentioned his fourth grade basketball coach. I thought I started him on the way. I move we adjourn.
Motion by Phil to adjourn,
Second.
second by Gary Hertzberg. Call the question. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Thanks, everybody.
Get a kid started, he gives you nothing.